As you'll tell by the title, we're going to be roasting some viral TikToks in which I'm going to go through all of them, tell you what I agree with, what I disagree with, and also potentially show you how to do it better. It's quite late tonight, and there are far more people here than anticipated. When I say far more, according to the app, there are 111 people in the gym. Funnily enough, this is actually the one we recently spoke about in the video, which went down a treat, so I'm glad you enjoyed that. Sick, let's go. So first video, we have an individual telling us how to build glutes if we're new to the gym. Firstly, I'm not new to the gym, but I do need to build my glutes. And the first movement she's suggesting is actually a dumbbell hip thrust. There's a pause there I'm going to throw in. Hip thrust, fantastic movement. Big fan when looking at developing the glutes and doing the hip thrust. But the bigger limitation there is the dumbbell, and I'm going to explain why. Fundamentally, your glutes are a very strong muscle group. You can lift a lot of weight when doing glute dominant movements like the hip thrust. There is likely going to be no dumbbell heavy enough when considering a hip thrust. Your gym probably has dumbbells up to, let's say, 100 pounds. You should be hip thrusting a lot more than that, and if you don't think you're capable, I bet you are. Secondly, how are you going to get that dumbbell from the floor to the hips to engage in the thrust? You're probably not going to be able to. It's heavy and uncomfortable and awkward. I know what you're asking, Harry, how would you fix the problem? Quite simply, grab a bar or a Smith machine or a machine, something that allows you to load a lot more weight, but also allows ease of use, which means you can get under said weight without having to play Twister with yourself and risking hurting yourself. So instead of a dumbbell, I would actually prefer a Smith machine that's a little bit easier to use and a little bit more stable, but quite frankly, somebody's using it and I already feel uncomfortable enough. Grab a barbell, ideally with a pad. I don't know where one is. Do not do this without a pad. You're just going to hurt yourself and you're ultimately going to limit how much weight you can use due to how uncomfortable you're going to be. Like so, bang, bang, drive, very nice, easy as that. What I'm then going to do in that situation is I'm now no longer limited by having a 100-pound dumbbell at use. I can now load up many of the hundreds of the pounds on the barbell, get into the movement easily, progressively overload for a very long time, and actually push myself to, if not close to failure, which is really what's going to matter when you're looking at building your bottom. Row your boat gently down the stream. But wait, there's more. In fairness, a few of these movements are actually tolerable, borderline actually good, but not this one. This is shocking. So I've actually done a video on this previously where I spoke about how the dumbbell sumo squat, whatever you want to call it, isn't a particularly effective glute move. I gave many reasons why, and one of them was, again, overload capabilities. Another one was going to be a grip consideration. Third one was, quite frankly, there are better movements you can do to more effectively target the glutes. For example, we've got a thrust pattern in there. Very nice, did that earlier. Huge bottom already. We've got an RDL pattern in there. That's absolutely fine. A hip hinge, I respect it. We have a back extension there. Bloody fantastic. We're laughing. We've got a dumbbell split squat in there. Also cracking. So what I would do as a fifth movement, instead of that silly sumo squat thing, something like a machine abduction or a glute med kickback variation. Hello, what are you doing? I'm over here, thank you. Eyes on the prize, please. If you do feel the need to add a fifth glute movement to your workout, which you absolutely can if you want to, but you probably don't need to, I would consider something like a machine abduction, like so. Very nice, very nice. What this does is it potentially shifts a little bit more emphasis over to a muscle of the glutes that is commonly neglected, being the glute med, which is also utilized when doing glute med kickback, in which you're kicking back at a bit of an angle. What you may find when doing this, occasionally, it can promote a little bit of sciatica-like pain down the leg for some people. And that usually stems from the fact that the piriformis may be experiencing a bit too much utilization, which then in turn can promote some piriformis inflammation, which then results in pressing against the sciatic nerve, causing that little bit of pain, which also has the potential to develop into something like piriformis syndrome. What you can do to potentially mitigate that, lean forward slightly, boom, boom, very nice, very nice. Glutes, very good, very good. Do you have to lean forward? No, but if you are experiencing any kind of sciatica-like pain, it might be worth a try. And now, we go to the next video. So, this next video, we have an individual with a bloody impressive physique doing many a bicep variation back to back to back to back to back. Absolutely fantastic. If you want to train like that, you certainly can, and no one's going to stop you. But if building muscle is your primary goal, as indicated by this video, we're going to correct a few things. By default, if you are doing 4 movements back to back to back to back, what you typically find is the earlier variations of the movements you're going through are going to be so far from failure, you're not really experiencing adequate stimulus for growth. We know when looking at building muscle, you need to train 2, if not pretty close to failure. When you're doing a 10 by 10 by 10 by 10, you are not taking many of those reps to, if not close to failure. So why would you waste your time doing the initial 35 reps or whatever it was when you could just do the last exercise and train hard? So if your working sets look like this, and they're consisting of about 50 reps, stop being a sausage, put dumbbells down, grab something that's actually going to challenge you and something you can take to, if not close to failure. How's Matt clean? This individual is telling us with 285.3 thousand likes that to slim down her arms, which implies a spot reduction of fat, we don't use heavy weight. We use light weight for high reps.
Because I wanted to slim down my arms, I had to make sure that I was using light weight. We're doing more of a strength training rather than doing hypertrophy training, which promotes more growth, okay? Weight, and I do high reps.
Firstly, we can't spot reduce fat. Spot reduction of fat indicates or implies that you can choose where you're going to lose fat. That's not the case. Fat loss is going to be largely genetic. So once you enter a calorie deficit where you are moving more and eating less, you are going to lose fat over time. Where you lose it is completely determined by genetics. You cannot change that, unfortunately. Eventually, you will lose it where you want to. You just may have to be a little bit patient. The whole concept of doing lightweight for high reps is very common. It's been floating around the industry since I started many, many years ago. Sadly, it's not true. The idea there is lightweight high reps will kind of tone your arms or encourage fat loss to occur in the area. But that's not going to happen. I've already mentioned how you can't spot reduce fat. Whether you're looking to build muscle, lose fat, whatever, whether you're in a calorie surplus or a deficit, your training shouldn't really change. When you're looking at losing fat in any capacity, one of the big things you want to focus on there is actually maintaining muscle, maybe even still potentially building some muscle. Your training shouldn't change depending on the state you're in. Deficit, maintenance, surplus. The argument is you can probably tolerate a little bit more volume in a surplus due to additional energy. Lift heavy, which is obviously subject to the individual. Lift 2 if not close to failure, and keep your reps sensible. If you're doing sets of 30 reps, I ask you why. When looking at hypertrophy stimulus, you essentially want to look at the reps closest to failure, the ones that are going to basically encourage the most growth. So if you're doing a set of 30 versus let's say a set of 5 as just an example, and both of them are taken to failure, if you're only getting a select few number of stimulating reps, what are you doing with the extra 20-something plus reps in the set of 30? You're wasting time and you're probably accumulating a lot of fatigue. And when we refer to toning muscle, that term doesn't actually kind of exist. What you really mean is you want to look a bit more defined, and that's ultimately going to be determined by your body fat percentage. So doing this for many, many thousands of reps may burn a lot and may hurt a lot, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're working the muscles effectively. This next video, this very impressive looking individual tells us that the reason why you may not have that separation on your shoulders is due to the fact that you're doing too many shoulder presses and not enough isolation work.
And what you'll find is you start to lose the lines and the separation between muscle groups because they're doing too much just pressing. And I believe that to get that detail out is about you doing movements that really emphasize and help with the separation.
What? This is a bit more of an advanced one, but I'm going to be honest with you. No disrespect. Everyone has their own beliefs, but really think about it. How realistic does that sound? Not very. Fundamentally, when you're doing a movement, your primary goal is to build some muscle if hypertrophy is your desired result. The movements you choose to do will not influence the striations that your body is forming. Whether you do shoulder presses, front raises, side raises, whatever it may be, each movement is respective to its intended purpose. If you want to develop your side delts, you're probably going to do shoulder presses with a wider arm path and maybe some side raises, things along those lines. None of those things are going to determine how striated you are. What will determine how striated your muscles actually are and how visible those striations are is going to be how lean you are. If you're at a higher body fat percentage, you will not see much definition or the separation this individual is talking about. If you really want to see that separation, get really lean. And if you can't see it, you probably need to get even leaner. That's like saying doing a movement like this is less likely to cause visible striations compared to a movement like this, which following his logic would create a more visibly striated muscle. So this next individual, it's Dr. Glutes, very well-known character in the industry. And although I do agree with some stuff, I'm gonna have to disagree with something here. Throughout this video, he speaks about how you should do leg extensions, the movement we're on now, lean all the way back.
But sitting straight on the leg extension is the reason your thighs have ghosted you.
His justification was that the rec fem, which is a muscle of the quads, does not get trained adequately when you are upright. That's not true though, is it? Sit down for this one, get a pen and paper out, we're going to do a science lesson. The quad is separated into 4 muscles, with obviously quad meaning 4. The rec fem, rectus femoris, is one of them. The rec fem is a biarticular muscle, which means it crosses at 2 joints, crosses at the knees and the hips. The rec fem does not experience adequate stimulus when doing a squats pattern, for example, because you are moving at both the knees and the hips. Therefore, its respective length doesn't change. It's shortening at one joint and lengthening at the other. So rather than shortening and lengthening, it does this. Respective length isn't changing, therefore the stimulus it experiences is not adequate. When you're on a leg extension machine, whether you are upright or lying all the way back, the moving parts are not changing. you are still only moving at the knee, which means regardless, upright or leant back, the rec fem is going to experience adequate stimulus for growth. So whether I'm up here or leant back as far as I can, like so, do a leg extension, what my hips are doing are somewhat irrelevant to the range of motion my rec fem is going through, because I'm only sufficiently moving at the knee. It's not going to suddenly disengage the muscle and eliminate any stimulus for growth. Although, there is an argument here. When you lean forward slightly, you put the rec fem in more of a shortened position, whereas if you lean back slightly, you actually end up potentially putting the rec fem in a slightly more lengthened position. There is an argument for and against either, but at the end of the day, someone's going to say the shortened position is better because it's a shortened position dominant movement. Someone's going to say leaning back is going to be better because they believe that a more lengthened position is going to encourage more growth. I don't care. You can argue it however you want. It's your preference, your choice. But what I typically do, if I'm programming this twice in a week for whatever reason, I might do one of each, purely for the sake of variation. Just do leg extensions however you feel comfortable, and don't listen to everything people online say. Like with all my videos, this is simply my opinion, and I'm not trying to discredit anybody online. I'm simply presenting my counter arguments to what they're stating based on my beliefs and the research I've read, and also the practical application I've engaged in over the course of my many years in the fitness industry. Everybody online thinks they're a professional. Everybody online thinks they're an expert. People tend to regurgitate information that they've heard elsewhere, think it sounds pretty cool, so it must be right, but they don't really understand what it means, or they don't apply common sense and or logic to the equation. This is tricky because it often leads individuals like yourself down a bit of a rabbit hole into misinformation and potentially subpar training as well. Challenge everything you see. Challenge everything you hear. If somebody says something, do your own research. Does it make sense? Do you have anything to back it up? In addition to that, if you aren't ever sure what to do, I'll tell you a great solution here. Link down below in the description, you have the link to TFNL coaching. There's an application form. So if you fill in the application form, let me know what's going on, let me know what's occurring. I'll send you an email. We'll hop on a free Zoom call, talk about life, talk about waffles, talk about whatever you want to talk about. Then we can ponder potential coaching options to identify whether we can work together to help you achieve your goals, whatever they may be and wherever you may be as well. Link down below. If you like the video, like the video. I would very much appreciate it if you did consider subscribing to the channel, as it does mean a lot and it makes YouTube believe I'm worth watching, which you and I both know is not true, but we can lie about it. Until the next one, thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my excessive rule breaking today. And thank you for tolerating the video. I feel very anxious being here.